Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuning in, chiming there, having the opportunity to add your 2 cents throughout the program, if you so choose to do so. But of course, just a lot of ways to interact with us. Get into those phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do. But of course, comments going in throughout the duration, including hi to Basic Gardener right on cue with the hi and the wave to you as well, certainly. And a lot to delve into here today. A lot of updates specifically on stories that we have been continuing to follow, including what's going on with the BOTA expansion. Well, an update to come there, so that maybe a little bit more teasy than I intended it to be, but also some updates on what's been going on behind the scenes with the district attorney's office, some updates from the again currently appointed district attorney Bill Hicks, and also what will be happening when it comes to city council continuing the investigation into those purchasing or P cards that have become their own focus of a bit of controversy and necessary continued investigation. Also at the State House, continued kerfuffles abound as the stakes, okay, maybe not totally an escalation, but it does feel like the stakes continue to be raised. New demand coming out from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in relation to pressure he is feeling from both the House of Representatives and Speaker Dade Phelan and, well, realistically speaking, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So we'll delve into all of that and what's going on there. The demand he has to come back and do your job because he doesn't like how he did it last time. It's in a nutshell, maybe not totally generous to the, again, Lieutenant Governor, but we'll get into all of that as there is still a lot to be done there. But we'll also be visiting with El Paso Inc. and some of their major and in-depth stories affecting the region, including Crane Watch, big projects moving in and around and related to the DA, the jockeying for the next DA's race, as well as a whole lot more when it comes to important issues like drug overdosing and the issues surrounding it in our area here. And yeah, of course, the DA race, among other things, and the impact it has on it. As we have George Zavala chiming in with us as well. Actually, I got a message going to be sending to you, George. Thanks for chiming in and wishing a good afternoon, certainly to you as well. So there's a lot going on today. So let's delve right into it. For our news partners at KFOX 14, El Paso District Attorney Bill Hicks says criminal case backlog is under 10,000 cases. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing that this is back under, given some of the previous situation that we were looking at. I mean, the cases that were dismissed numbering close to the 1,000. So not totally sure if that is totally a better part of it. And John Brazelton unhappy with some of the things going on with politicians, saying El Paso politicians love to spend money when it belongs to someone else, like the taxpayer. You show me a politician that doesn't, and I'll show you a politician that has a slush fund elsewhere. I'm just going to put it that way. So at the very least, I'd like them to be upfront about it, and then we can yell about that separately. But when it comes to the, again, district attorney, one particular aspect of elected official, what Hicks is saying that, quote, I'm very pleased with the work our hardworking initiative staff have been doing, saying that specifically about putting it in perspective in a way, saying it's about 1.5 years worth of cases in the court system being put in about a year. So they need for about the next 2 years a surge of staff and attorneys to help us deal with that, quoting someone about him here. And there is still quite a lot of vacancies in there. Again, quoting directly from Hicks, the top priority we have is about 10 or 12 attorney positions, and I think about 5, maybe 6 staff positions. And then in temporary staffing, we're asking for a 2-year surge in staffing. So another 8 or so attorneys, probably another 6 staff members in this second group of attorneys that we're hoping to get added into the next cycle. And also having difficulties filling 6 entry-level position due to a major amount of vacancies. So not total perspective. Again, we had some of the numbers on the amount of cases that were getting dismissed. Again, it got to right about 1,000. I think technically just under, but still significant in its own right. And those were just the cases in which there hadn't been action within statutory guidelines. So not like totally statute of limitations, like they can no longer be prosecuted, but just in the process of bringing it through the legal system, they weren't hitting certain required benchmarks. So they could be refiled And I'm sure that is some of what is going on there. Again, backlog is backlog. Some just had some more serious things going on with it. So better is better, but being anywhere in the realm of 10,000 cases behind, again, perspective can seem fleeting here, but I'm going to call anywhere near 5 figures of cases being behind, even if this is low and now technically below 5 figures, is not great. Some other comments coming in, including a Robbie Floro saying hello to everyone, and RJ about one of the stories we're going to be talking about, saying that is one of the bad thing about El Paso. Drugs are cheaper here and increase in price after they pass the checkpoints. Now fentanyl and the rest, pray for the kids. It's also for the rest of us because, well, we'll delve into that, including the Narcan situation and the supply levels. I mean, we've already talked a little bit about action coming out of, say, city council, among other things, but there's a whole lot more widespread. I don't have it confirmed or not, but I may have seen an example. I didn't get a good picture of it because I was driving at the time, but hoping it isn't an example of that trank, the quote unquote zombie drug, which feels a little bit overwrought because they're not going around asking to feast on brains, but locked in place and not moving. If this person wasn't still upright, I would have been worried that they were no longer with us, so to speak. But in any case, we'll be delving further into that again, talking with El Paso a little bit later. But investigations do, of course, continue, and this one could potentially lead to prosecution. It's not too clear just yet, but again, from our news partners at KFOX 14, city internal auditor to investigate city-issued purchasing cards on city council members, specifically looking to review the purchasing card activity for the years 2020 and 2021. Now, we have talked previously about the fact that there were the gas card irregularities and already some refund, including from current representative Cassandra Hernandez. But the P card purchases, our news partners at KFOX 14 have gotten, according to the usage report, quoting directly from it, saying that former councilwoman Claudia Rodriguez, who was being accused of excessively using her gas card, in addition, spent nearly $13,000 from April 2022 to December 2022, spent in several stores, including Walmart, Marshalls, and Target. And then, of course, Cassandra Hernandez also being mentioned in this, again, also on the gas card situation. And she is the one who did that very interesting tactic of saying, I paid back the gas card, and now we're giving away gas cards. Like, I guess putting a lantern on it. I mean, it's an interesting bit of spin. I'll certainly give it that. But we can see how this one ends up going out. So the chief internal auditor, Edmundo Calderon, will be looking at activity of purchasing gas cards on Wednesday, saying, quote, City Council asked me about additional years, specifically 2020 and 2021. My staff is currently reviewing that data and also looking further into the gas cards as well. This will also include usage reports from the city manager. So there's probably some needed investigation on this, reforming some other conversations, having that, I mean, some of the numbers that have come out on this, some reporting that's been going on around the city, including individual days where more than like $5,000 was being spent on these P cards, is concerning. And well, just the conversation was, if anything like that was happening in the private sector, someone would have been fired a long time ago. So Richard Janicek with an interesting question saying, did the city check the odometer readings before they gave out the P cards? Wondering how the miles per gallon relate to the excessive amount spent. Again, you might be slightly conflating things here and being accused of being generous with calling it irregularities. Listen, I am absolutely wanting an investigation on this. I'll say irregularities for now. Like it's within the realm of that. If it gets more serious, such as getting to, a phrase that likes to get thrown around, but I like to have evidence before I use, aka fraud, want to be damn sure about what did or didn't happen, so fully support this investigation. So yes, I will say irregularities for now. At the very least, eyebrow raising, another good one to use, saying you spent how much doing what? And the what is kind of the question here. So, but again, back to Richard Janicek's question, there was the gas card issue. So that one, I guess it might make sense for odometers, like the system we have here. You got 3 bits of information that you need. You need the card itself. You need the one that is tied to the vehicle it is. You have to input the odometer and then your employee ID along with it. Don't worry, even my bosses are listening, this isn't proprietary information. Anyone who has had a corporate issue gas card has probably had something very similar like to this, and that's how ours end up working. And RJ saying that he feels like I'd be safe saying fraud, but listen, I tend to be pretty careful with my language, so if we're going to get there, we're going to get there. But in the meantime, I'll use the language that I do. Don't worry, I use it for a reason. But for the most part, yeah, investigation into this and finding out, okay, who spent what on what and how and why and for what purpose. So again, the gas card situation is one thing, and yeah, we have to put in our odometer when we are filling up our station vehicles, and that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. The fact that this may or may not be a part of what was going on with the gas cards is a separate question, and there have been, of course, different complaints that have already been filed upon this on existing council members, at the very least. Well, one in particular, Cassandra Hernandez, as ethics rules of council may not still apply, probably don't apply to those that were previously on council, but there might be some other legal questions that, again, fully support investigation into that further. And saying we're trying to downplay this. I mean, look, we're talking about thousands being spent, which, to be fair, in the midst of the budget, let's call it the city of El Paso's budget, near enough to about $1 billion. Listen, this might be peanuts in comparison, and yet the attitude that could be revealed behind it could be disturbing. Just saying, someone's saying like, oh, well, it's just money. Yeah, you go to anyone's house and say, oh, don't worry, I'm just spending your money, and see how they feel off about it. As we also have Austin Redfern encouraging us to kick it off and wishing good afternoon to all out there. So we got a lot more to talk about when it comes to that, and there will be more coming. Again, more discussion happening here. And again, one more thing I want to mention before we take that first break of this hour already, that there is going to be a informational community stakeholder meeting about Bridge of the Americas, more better known as BOTA, that is going to be happening at the 5 to 7 p.m. at the Chamizal Recreational Center and Library, 2119 Cypress Avenue. So, of course, this was a different designs that could end up wiping out some or all of the El Paso County Coliseum. So we'll see what comes from that. But that meeting, I do believe, happening Tuesday night. So tonight, 5 to 7 p.m. So if anyone's headed out there, please let us know what your impression of that is. Of course, we'll have more coverage happening a little bit later. But let's go ahead and take that first break of this hour right now. So if you're only hearing what you want to hear, saying that, oh, well, you're downplaying it, as opposed to saying that, yeah, corruption is bad, I got nothing else for you. But let's go and take that first break of this hour right now. Coming out of this break, going to be talking more about the things affecting us here in the borderland, including visiting with El Paso Inc. on some of the major stories, Crane Watch, among other things, and also the DA's race, drug issues in the area, a whole lot more. Stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A multi-vehicle crash on Gateway South at Trans Mountain is blocking the turnaround lane and the left turn lane. Multiple vehicles involved, and you can expect a backup. I-10 eastbound before Airway. An accident's blocking the left lane there, including a couple of vehicles off to the left. I-10 eastbound at Copia, a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Off.
Off Clean Feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Babbel. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at babbel.com/TNC.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language, like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
It's incredible. After using Babbel, I'm ready to start having real conversations in French.
There's all kinds of ways to learn. Use Babbel's podcasts or games or videos. You can even join live classes with a language teacher.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
Babbel.
Babbel. Babbel. Évidemment.
Text radio to 64,000 to try Babbel for free. That's radio to 64,000 to try Babbel free. RADIO to 64,000.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. and we can give you access to those potential customers more cost effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. From your cell, dial pound 250 and say keyword great results. That's pound 250 and say great results.
Attorney Joe Cordell. Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Dallas-Fort Worth area attorneys. Offices in Dallas, Fort Worth, and St. Louis. CordellCordell.com.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Good afternoon to Mondo Manganda, chiming in over on the Twitch stream as well. Always appreciate that. We're in all those places because we think it'll be useful to give people a chance to chime in, add their 2 cents, at least participate. You don't actually have to say anything, but hey, if it works for you, if you can hear us, see us, interact to your level of comfort, we certainly encourage more, but hey, that's our end of it. You're in the right place as we continue our dual missions of having live local talk radio here in the borderland, because damn it, I think we deserve it, but then also talking about the things that affect us here, because no one else is ever going to have that discussion about the things that affect us right here than the people who live, work, play, raise families, etc., do all that stuff here. So to further and getting into more on that end, we are of course joined here in studio right now by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in on some of the big stories as we do most first Tuesdays of the month. So thank you very much for joining us here today.
Hi, Andrew. It's good to be here.
Absolutely happy to have you on, because a lot of things going on in and around the community right now, and beyond all legal implications, which we're also going to get into. One of the things I wanted to dive straight into is the crane watch, because that's one of the things that I think y'all are better at focusing on, is the continued development that goes in and around town. Because, okay, it can get real easy to get caught up in the projections, prognostication about what's going on with the economy, recession, whatever, but knowing what actually is actually happening, boots on the ground, shovel ready, all those great kind of phrases. Crane watch is the kind of encapsulation there, because there's a lot of cranes that can be involved in it. Not always, but it's an easy way to put it.
So we periodically come around and do a story that sort of rounds up the projects that are kind of coming up out of the ground, and it might involve big cranes.
Yeah, sometimes do, particularly like in the downtown area. There were a bunch around the La Nube, even before the whole fire. That didn't end up being that much of a backset on it. But yeah, so crane watch, basically shorthand for here's what's coming up around town.
So if we're talking about cranes, I mean, the big one that people have seen is parked at the corner of Hawthorne and Rim. A literal crane for our crane watch. That's the future home of UTEP's $80 million Advanced Manufacturing and Aerospace Center.
Right, because that's, and when we're talking about that advanced manufacturing, people may say, like, what's going on there? There's implications of, 3D printing, essentially on an industrial scale, among other things, manufacturing, as it's also being put in some ways. So it's an interesting possibility, even if not quite a chance to see what'll be in place just yet.
Yeah, this is part of a broader project to try to grow the aerospace sector here. It goes back years, but it really got a lot of attention after that $80 million Build Back Better grant from the federal government, which is funding some of this. So they're looking to put in manufacturing and such over by the El Paso airport. There's education initiatives, other things. And then, of course, this big building going up at UTEP, which will house the aerospace center. And, you think of the history of this region. There's a movie coming out by Christopher Nolan that'll deal with the nuclear history, Oppenheimer.
Yep.
Trinity Site, all that. There's a big sort of aerospace history here, as well as you have the new space race happening here with Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic and all that. So the region's really just hoping to capitalize on that. So as we talk about cranes, that's a big one over at UTEP.
Absolutely, because we've had conversations in recent years with, say, the president of UTEP and her perspective, both from her previous career being within the civilian side of the Air Force, but then also the space race, the way they're focused on that. So it ends up hopping in on a lot of subjects. But another one that is not as innovative, but still interesting enough that certainly has got a lot of conversation from our audience has been about the interactive aquarium, I guess is the right way to put it, coming to Sunland Park Mall.
I think we talked a bit about this last time, but stingrays, otters, and more undersea creatures are coming to Sunland Park Mall. So that's a project that's underway, expected to open in spring 2024. And as we're looking at sort of smaller retail things that make El Pasoans very excited, a couple of others, you got Panera Bread, the first one. Coming to El Paso.
That's one of those. Okay, I recognize that name, if only from commercials that air everywhere here, but you can't get it here. So I mean,
it has its following.
I've had people be very excited about that one, I will freely admit.
So Panera Bread, Cheddar's coming to West Town Marketplace, and then of course, very visible, you've got the Tech Stop projects. So there's if you've gone out to Far East El Paso on Montana, you've seen where they're essentially turning the road into a highway,
right?
Access roads and all of that. That is a big project underway, I believe, $144 million slated to complete in spring of 2024.
And hopefully no delays on this one, like some other major transportation projects I've been seeing. TxDOT is not subject to the same kind of bankruptcy, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's the Pelicano project. And a bankruptcy and a dispute there is behind the seeming never-ending delays there that has frustrated many East El Paso folks.
Oh yeah, we've had some commenting on this, and in a similar type of vein, one that you all have previously reported on. I've noticed some work going on at the Montecillo near Alamo Draft House. Them doing a lot more moving of earth over there. So that's one that you all previously reported on, going on with disputes and lawsuits, a number being filed, so most of them dismissed.
That's sort of the town center over there at Montecillo. Opened last week, actually, at Montecillo is the resort over there. They have the Lazy River, so that's a big project. And then continuing with the road projects, you've got the widening of I-10 from Mesa to the state line.
Yep, and that's, as much as that's been a headache, it doesn't, there have been road closures that have been involved in it, and that whole lane shift and no longer the access road, like if you're going on the on-ramp, you're going straight into a lane kind of thing. I'm not calling it fun because it's pretty close to my neck of the woods as it is anyway, but it's kind of nowhere near the heartache and growing pains we're probably going to have once we start seeing that part completed. I've been saying this for years, and I'll probably be saying this for the better part of the next decade. This is only the beginning, because once we start getting into the parts next of it, we've talked a bunch about that potential for the downtown deck, then the downtown widening, all of that. This is prelude.
But this is this is set to finish in the second half of 2025.
Right.
And we can stop worrying about that and worry about the next project. It's construction, it never ends.
Yeah, and there's an argument to be had that therefore it's a good thing, because if it ever ends, that means that we don't get any more. El Paso's not getting any smaller. Well, despite some recent estimates
estimates have shown that El Paso may be actually getting a little smaller, but it doesn't feel like it, does it?
No.
I think there is actually the city may have gotten very slightly smaller, but this region is growing dramatically. So
that is
when you're talking
true.
About construction development, a lot of it's happening out in Horizon City. It's happening in the county. It's happening around El Paso. So it's not to say there's no growth here. There's lots of growth.
Yeah, the county is still seeing it. Yeah, those numbers
That's
that were coming out being reported on, the estimates from the Census Department, which does not have the cushiest of all jobs, only working once every 10 years. They do things in between that. And some of the estimates showing that El Paso may have lost, the city of El Paso, that is, about 1,000 over the last couple of years. I would agree with you entirely in your analysis that, the city may have, because, center hollowing out and kind of leading to the focus that we're kind of seeing from city council over recent years of, more infill development, more dense development, whether or not that's working or not. The impetus is very much the two areas of the city that grew the most were the ones on the furthest outskirts, either the what I call the Zaragoza Triangle, the Zaragoza Joe Battle, Montana area, or what we're still getting used to the idea of calling Northwest El Paso,
Right.
kind of near essentially Trans Mountain on the west side. Those were the districts that are close to there anyway, were the ones that grew the most and were basically the major reason for the redistricting that happened for city council.
At some point, what I'd love to hear from El Pasoans is what we call certain sides of the city, because it's shifting so much. I mean, that's a whole conversation unto its own, but those are our main crane watch projects we have undergoing right now. It looks like there's a lot more coming, though, with some of this state funding coming down the pipeline, but that's coming down the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, we'll have to talk more about that here in this next segment. Again, joining me in studio right now is Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., talking about some of the things they have been focusing on, and including to other questions like Mondo Moncada asking smaller population or otherwise, definitely population, but again, just the city limits, because there's definitely a lot more people and a lot more growth happening in the region overall and a lot more potential for it. So, I mean, Flaco Meta saying people moving to suburbs to escape El Paso city taxes. His guess, reasonable enough, but also that's just where the development is still happening. I mean, there have been some others not part of this one, like the whole North El Paso concept that's being floated.
Well, I mean, exactly. That's where the development in El Paso is happening. And when you talk to a lot of realtors, you talk to a lot of people looking for homes, that's also where people want to live. I mean, I very much enjoy my house in the Cielo Vista area, more towards the inside of the city. Again, some people are calling that central now. But a lot of folks, are wanting to live in those areas in, Northwest El Paso, North El Paso, which is sort of like far northeast. You got far east. So I think there are a number of drivers why people are living in those areas.
But we'll talk more about that. Got to take that next break right now, including those state funding issues. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso. Continuing on, talking with Robbie Gray, again, editor of El Paso Inc. After this break, here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A woman who worked at a daycare in Las Cruces that was recorded using force on a child has been arrested. Angie Flores was booked into the Doña Ana County Detention Center on Monday. The 59-year-old woman is facing 2 counts of abuse of a child. Her arrest comes after KFOX 14 reported on that recorded incident that took place in February. The recording showed a 3-year-old boy who was being cared for at Discovery Child Development Center being picked up by his hoodie and dragged across the floor. A Venezuelan migrant was arrested and accused of murdering a fellow migrant from Honduras at an El Paso motel. 34-year-old Eddie Jose Ortega Alvarado was charged with murder in the case of the 40-year-old migrant's death. On May 21st, El Paso police were called to the Budget Lodge Motel on North Mesa regarding a woman. The victim was found dead inside a hotel room. According to police, Ortega Alvarado and another migrant who were staying at the hotel left El Paso to Dallas-Fort Worth, where he was arrested on Friday. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Long delays on the I-10 eastbound this afternoon through downtown because of a crash before Airway at Buffalo Soldier. That's blocking the left lane and left shoulder. 25-minute delay back to Brown. An accident on Gateway South at Trans Mountain has the left lane closed, and the turnaround lane is also blocked. I-10 westbound slow from Mesa up to Vinton. Some road work, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Showers and thunderstorms will develop to our south and west and move through as we go through the evening and early nighttime hours. Some of those storms could contain hail or gusty winds. We'll see lows tonight dropping down into the 50s and 60s for our Wednesday. Partly cloudy, breezy, quieter for tomorrow, high around 90 degrees. For our Thursday, partly cloudy with high around 94. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Macy's Backstage. What will you find at Macy's Backstage? Here's a hint. Summer essentials for $25 and under, like swimsuits, cover-ups, sunglasses, and more accessories you need now. Find the latest trends and new arrivals at a Macy's Backstage store near you.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. This ad is paid for by the settlement specialists. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see see if you're entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup, call now. Our team is here to fight for everyday people and to get you the compensation you may deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-778-9713 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry. Time is limited. Call 800-778-9713. 800-778-9713.
Want a $100 shopping spree on the latest fashion, home goods, or beauty products? Just download the Temu app and enter promo code iHeartTemu in the search bar and get started. That's TEMU. Get a $100 coupon bundle just by downloading the Temu app and using promo code iHeartTemu.
Off clean feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
This report is sponsored by Off.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one. You can also find us on similar pages, including, again, other Facebook pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do. But in the meantime, a lot of comments coming in. But we also have, of course, joining us here in studio, Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. Thanks for sticking around with us here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you on. And a couple other comments coming in, including Sean Gardner and Willie Jenkins, wishing a good afternoon and a good day. And God bless everyone, respectively. But on the growth issues there, John Browsland saying crappy roads inside the city, and saying specifically that the road bond issue passed, no action by the city. I think we're still in the evaluation part of that. I will say I haven't seen anything specific out of that, but also not one I've been watching like a hawk exactly. But, I mean, those were part of the previous bonds from the November election, one of those set of 3. So a lot of those are still in the evaluation phase, at the very least, like Proposition C from that one, I know certainly is, that one being the environmental concern. So we'll see what happens. But also, I would dispute that the idea that the roads inside the city are driving people to go to outside the city, because unless we're seeing all those people like work from home or going north to Cruces, or for the North El Paso part of it, Chaparral, they're having to still use those roads as they go around the rest of the city.
Farther outside the city you live, the more experience you're going to have on the roads with your commute.
That's true, and positive or negative, it's going to be experience overall.
Probably mostly negative.
There was this one defensive driving video I watched back from the 90s, because the one time I had to do that, that's when it was from. And it was the way they talked about it was different. Say about, just so I can just enjoy my drive. And that's kind of phrasing we don't use anymore, I feel like. Enjoy the drive, because it's like, I just want to get there, man.
Yeah, not much enjoyment there.
So we have, of course, a bunch of other things, including funding from different sources that have been coming in, particularly from the Texas legislature, as much as the kerfuffles over funding, budgets, particularly the whole property taxes, the methods, the kerfuffle between the House and the Senate within the state of Texas does continue on that. And I'll talk a little bit further about that once we finish up here with Robbie. But as much as that's still going on, there were budget items, because Texas, the one of the like do or die items that has to happen by the end of the regular session, is setting the budget for the next 2 years. And that $30 billion plus surplus that was there, not all of it got spent, because basically statutorily they basically couldn't spend all of it, but there's still a lot that has been being allocated, and a good chunk of it coming to El Paso that y'all have done a bit of a deep dive into, right?
Yeah, there's some good news there. I mean, we've had years where we had to report where they're having to make cuts, and those are the concerns. But this year, not one of those years. And some of that money from the state is going to be headed our way. So here are some of those big items. $65 million for the creation of a comprehensive cancer center. That's probably one of the bigger ones.
Right.
It's a partnership between UMC and Texas Tech here in El Paso. Your readers are probably familiar with that, in part from the attempt to do a bond issue on the attempt to move forward
okay.
to fund that cancer center through a bond. But in this case,
Interesting, okay.
$65 million in state funding is coming for that. We've got $50 million for the state behavioral health hospital. That's a big issue for this region.
Sure.
As in many other areas of healthcare, there is
Sure.
a significant shortage there. I mean, when I heard about the wait lists at the behavioral health hospitals here, I was pretty surprised about that. You got $10 million for a new Department of Public Safety headquarters. And then here's one I think you will enjoy particularly, Andrew.
Mhm.
We've got $10 million coming toward repairs for the Weiler aerial tramway.
Yeah, and of course that one, I mean, repairs is maybe a little bit of a misnomer there because sure, there's things that are not working. That replacement is
Really more of
part
a
it.
replacement.
Yeah, because I mean, that area has been around long enough. Of course, part of its existence comes from there were questions that come up recently about the age of KTSM in general as an entity, and we're going back to coming up, if not on, we're in like 90 years ago. So tramway not quite that old, but old enough that the lifespan of certain equipment, like you can repair things until they can no longer be repaired and beyond, get into a whole, Abraham Lincoln's axe or a ship of Theseus type of implication there of, is it truly repair or have you replaced enough of it that it's a totally different thing? We're beyond all those considerations and they just have to be replaced. So
I think the answer is it's going to be a totally different thing.
It's going to be a totally
and in
different
this case,
thing.
for the tramway, it was a great kind of tourist thing to do. Always took kind of the out-of-towners to it, but it's more important than that because up on that mountain are key communications towers, which I believe we're probably using right now.
The one that they're hearing us on right now, that's actually AM works weirdly. It's out in the desert,
Well,
and I'm sure
there you go. But
I'm
if
sure
you're
we'll have
watching
someone there.
watching TV,
or any of our FM stations, there are definitely
and what I think
implications there.
maybe a lot of people don't know is it's also used by the federal agencies, law enforcement agencies, security. So there's a lot of concerns there that they can't get folks up to repair those. So $10 million for the tramway.
And that goes on top of $10 million from the previous session. So
that's right.
We're starting to talk some decent chunks of change. Whether or not inflation has impacts on that is a separate issue, but it's good to know that the focus does continue on it.
Yeah, so another item here too, we got $4 million for repairs and renovation to the McGoffin Home State Historic Site. Apparently there's damage to the some of the adobe and that needs to be taken care of. So those are some of the big items coming our way.
Yeah. So, I mean, so those are some of the big ones here. And one interesting one, as much as the cancer center, I didn't realize personally, the implications between that and that bond issue, that the certificate of obligation bond, as opposed to the general obligation bond that was put forth before the county on that ended up getting the kibosh put onto it by some citizen petitions, that this had implications toward that. But one other one about kind of expansion of facility in our area, to basically $250,000 for El Paso Law School feasibility study. That's been an item of interest for a while now and will probably be a feature of future legislative sessions.
Yeah, probably. This is a small amount, $250,000. It'll do a feasibility study. It will be interesting to see where that goes.
Absolutely. So, and of course, as much as about the state legislature, we've been talking about different aspects of it, including impacts from our local state legislators, particularly that of Joe Moody, Democrat, representing more or less, let's call it the west side of El Paso. You can look up his exact district on epcountyvotes.com, where you can also see the current election, but I'll harp on that later. But he's been one of the names that has been floated as a potential for this upcoming DA's race. As much as we've been talking about legal progression, those caseloads that the current, again, Bill Hicks, as appointed by Governor Greg Abbott, has been dealing with. And he's also, he's one of the ones he's also able to speak with directly, along with a couple others. Again, Moody being floated and hasn't actually directly commented on that yet. I'm dubious about it at best, but some others have basically, if not already, basically thrown their hat into the ring.
Yeah, so the landscape for next year's election of the El Paso District Attorney is starting to take shape, even though that doesn't happen till next year. We're already talking about it here.
Yeah.
So we have kind of a range between sort of announced and saying going to run and those saying that going to run in the future and those sort of rumored. So we have the current district attorney, Bill Hicks, who told us that he says, I am sure that I eventually will file. And that I eventually will run. So he's planning to, but he hasn't formally announced at this point. We have a couple of others here. You have Nancy Casas, who says that she is running. She was one of the attorneys who was fired by Iván Rosales, the former district attorney. She's been the principal attorney in the criminal unit of the county's attorney's office for the past 6 years. And then someone else who has actually strongly hinted that he's going to run, he told us, "I'm very strongly considering running again," is James Montoya.
Yep, James Montoya, who of course was the runoff candidate on the opposite side of Yvonne Rosales on the Democrat runoff. That was effectively the election during the primaries before all of this ended up coming down here. We did have interviews with both of them at that point in time here. So I'll say I'm mildly surprised about this. Frankly, I thought that he had left town, or some of the implications I was hearing. So if he's interested in running again, that will be interesting. So already, again, like you said, that race shaping up pretty roundly.
And both those, so Nancy's Casas and James Montoya, as well as Bill Hicks, seems like the big issue here is reforming that office. Those, when you talk about why are they running, that seems to be a major issue. Another issue that has come up that particularly Bill Hicks has brought up is, important context here. El Paso does remain one of the safest cities in the country. I think we're number 4 at this point, maybe 4 or 5 for large cities. But the crime rate has been creeping upward, and we have this drug issue that has been increasingly an issue.
Right.
So while we do remain a safe city, the trends haven't been good. So that's another issue that we've heard the potential candidates for district attorney mentioned.
Yeah, we're not even anywhere near the filing deadlines of those there, just to make that
till November.
Perfectly clear. But of course, that drug issue, we've been talking about that in a couple of ways on airways recently. Narcan has been coming up, not even just recently. There were some stories going around last year about the supply, the availability of Narcan, that being the opioid overdose it reverses it. That's the correct phrase for it, drug. And of course, the need for it in our community, whether first responders were equipped with it or not. And of course, City Council has been doing some more recent on that, including funding towards that, applying some federal funds that are available towards that. And then, of course, there's the other one, the warnings that are being sounded by the local DEA and other federal officials about the so-called zombie drugs. So when it comes to the Narcan part of it here, again, the idea of having more supply, more availability is probably a good thing, even if the reason it's coming up because of the need for it is, well, a separate issue.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the need, the number of drug overdose deaths is creeping upward in El Paso. That's driven in part, like it is in much of the country, with the prevalence of fentanyl and other powerful synthetic opioids. Traditionally, El Paso hasn't had a major drug issue, drug overdose deaths compared to some other cities, but it's actually becoming more of an issue at this point. And as you mentioned, City Council did approve the use of opioid settlement funds. Now, if you remember, there are these big drug companies and there's this big issue nationwide. They agreed to a $50 billion settlement, and those funds are going to communities, including El Paso. The city's portion is of the first payment is $384,000. So what City Council was doing was appropriating those funds to help combat this increasing overdose and a drug addiction issue in the city.
So that's one aspect of this here. And of course, I mean, there being, again, ongoing conversations about, how do you mitigate this? How should police, again, other first responders have it available at some of the programs they've been focused on is like even handing it out to organizations in town.
That's right. So one of our reporters went out actually to walk the streets with one of these organizations in El Paso that does outreach to the community of people that live on El Paso streets. And they hand out information. They give people information on where they can get treatment. They also do distribute Narcan, which is the overdose reversing medication.
Right.
And, it's kind of surprising how much that they're distributing at this point. I mean, one of the people with the organization told our reporter, quote, "In the last 30 days or so, we had reported 48 overdoses, and they're worried about running out of their supply of Narcan because they're handing it out to folks that are worried that one, maybe they could overdose or they might come across somebody who is." So I think it's important not to put this in context, and not be alarmist. But it is an increasing issue, and I don't think it's something that El Paso has seen as much in the past.
I mean, yeah, the constant considerations that people always say to me is that it's not really a problem here. We're just the pass through. I mean, there's always the recognition that smuggling and things of those nature. There's a reason there are the checkpoints that basically surround us on all sides, going north, south, but not south, north, east, or west. And of course, run into different things if you go south. But that those implications are because of, trafficking, drugs, or humans, or otherwise. And the fact that stuff is happening here, it's not that it's never been, that it's just a pipeline and it just keeps on going. There's always been aspects of all of these crimes that do end up happening right here, but the further impacts we continue to see of it, I mean, I still feel like there's this kind of lingering stigma that, the opioid overdoses and, all of the prescription drugs that cause it, that's primarily in, the Appalachians and, those, poorer communities that are, very disparate and isolated. But no, it's always been everywhere, and El Paso has always seen a level of it. Now we're just seeing a higher level of it as it's been continuing to develop.
Well, and these drugs are very powerful.
Absolutely.
So that's where the overdose issue is coming in. And then you mentioned I guess what is known on the street as the zombie drug or tranq. And what that is xylazine, and it's a animal tranquilizer that's used for animals, but it's being increasingly found in street drugs because apparently it can extend the high, and it's used as a filler. It's cheap, but but the side effects of that are pretty awful, and it's also extraordinarily dangerous. We talked to law enforcement, the DEA here in the area, and they say that it isn't, El Paso is not a hotspot, but they are starting to see it here.
And some of the hallmarks I've seen of this in other places has been the reason they call it the zombie drug. Again, not that someone's going around to, gnawing on your head, but that they just kind of seem like locked in place. And I would almost call it like a statue thing, like locked legs and kind of almost slumped over. Some people almost looking folded in half. I wonder if I've seen an implication of it in our area of someone that was on the shopping cart. Basically, their legs were stock straight, but they were kind of slumped over, kind of into and onto the stuff on the shopping cart going down like Mesa or other major thoroughfare area in El Paso. It was on the capacity or ability to stop or take further look at it, but it does make me wonder, based on the reporting y'all having, if that was what I was seeing in that case.
Well, it also causes skin tissue to decay as well.
Yeah, a whole lot of... I thought for a minute about being a paramedic at one point early in my life, or at least going through the training, and then hearing some of the descriptions from those who have done it about some of the horrific things that people do to each other or sometimes themselves, just made me realize that probably wasn't going to be the career choice for me. So good luck and Godspeed to anyone dealing with this, and particularly our first responders in our community having to deal with any of these related issues.
Yeah, and besides increasing the supply of Narcan, some of the measures that City Council took is to increase training on how to use it. They're going to create a data dashboard that's going to provide information on the issue. They're also going to do a public education campaign and some other things. So it's a whole kind of a group of measures that they approved with this funding to combat this increasing issue here in El Paso.
Absolutely. So again, joining us here in studio right now has been Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. We're going to be talking a whole lot about these and other things affecting us here in the borderland, but we're going to take that first break, that next break of this hour right now, and we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines. So Robbie, again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And if you want to get on that phone line, we'll go ahead and open up that up now. The number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A woman who worked at a daycare in Las Cruces that was recorded using force on a child has been arrested. Angie Flores was booked into the Doña Ana County Detention Center on Monday. The 59-year-old woman is facing 2 counts of abuse of a child. Her arrest comes after KFOX 14 reported on that recorded incident that took place in February. The recording showed a 3-year-old boy who was being cared for at Discovery Child Development Center being picked up by his hoodie and dragged across the floor. A Venezuelan migrant was arrested and accused of murdering a fellow migrant from Honduras at an El Paso motel. 34-year-old Eddie Jose Ortega Alvarado was charged with murder in the case of the 40-year-old migrant's death. On May 21st, El Paso police were called to the Budget Lodge Motel on North Mesa regarding a woman. The victim was found dead inside a hotel room. According to police, Ortega Alvarado and another migrant who were staying at the hotel left El Paso to Dallas-Fort Worth, where he was arrested on Friday. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound before Airway, a crash at Buffalo Soldier on the 10 eastbound is finally cleared, but there's still a 20-minute backup all the way back to Brown downtown. Stop-and-go traffic on the I-10. Slow traffic on the 10 westbound from Mesa up to Vinton, 7-minute delays. An injury accident, northbound Dyer at Threadgill. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Macy's Backstage. What will you find at Macy's Backstage? Here's a hint. Summer essentials for $25 and under, like swimsuits, cover-ups, sunglasses, and more accessories you need now. Find the latest trends and new arrivals at a Macy's Backstage store near you.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else, and we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. Get started today at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Okay, so we have the car payment, the rent, utilities,
and the repair bill.
What should we do?
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, we could have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
Is foot pain making your life miserable? The Good Feet Store wants to help. We invite you to visit our store at Airway Boulevard at I-10 for a free fitting and test walk and learn more about how the Good Feet Store can help you find relief. The Good Feet Store.
Off clean feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
All right. Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso. Super out of time here for this hour, but we're going to be coming back right now with the top of the next hour and getting into those phone calls. So again, if you want to get on the line, add your 2 cents. Phone lines open now. We'll be queuing up for the next hour. 915-544-5876. 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound before Airway, a crash at Buffalo Soldier on the 10 eastbound is finally cleared, but there's still a 20-minute backup all the way back to Brown downtown. Stop-and-go traffic on the I-10. Slow traffic on the 10 westbound from Mesa up to Vinton, 7-minute delays. An injury accident, northbound Dyer at Threadgill. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Want to know what I like best about high school sports? I love watching my son run on the field. I love seeing him smile when he high-fives his teammates. I love seeing his eyes light up when his team scores a goal. I love the fact that since he's been playing high school sports, he's making better decisions. And I love knowing that high school sports have never been safer. Why? Because coaches have more information than they've ever had. Training techniques are more sophisticated, and equipment has never been more advanced. Playing high school sports isn't just safe. It's still the best way to give your teenager a healthy head start in life. And that's something I really love.
This message about the value of high school sports is presented by the Texas University Interscholastic League and the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Police are on the scene of an active shooter situation at Virginia Commonwealth University. Reports say multiple people were shot Tuesday around the school's Monroe Park campus in Richmond. Students were alerted to stay indoors. Some local high schools had graduations that were scheduled in the area Tuesday. The field for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination is expected to get more crowded tonight. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is expected to formally launch his White House bid at a town hall event in New Hampshire. He officially filed the paperwork today. Meantime, on Wednesday, former Vice President Pence is expected to announce his candidacy in Des Moines. Pence filed paperwork to run on Monday. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to visit China in the coming weeks.
It comes as the U.S. and China have been working to reset relations after a tense year between the two countries. Blinken was originally set to visit the country in February, but the trip was postponed after a Chinese spy balloon was found floating above the U.S. It's also after American and Chinese officials reportedly had productive talks in Beijing yesterday. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Attorneys for former President Trump are trying to stop writer E. Jean Carroll from suing him a second time. She filed a second lawsuit after Trump appeared on CNN's town hall where he called her a whack job and denied her rape allegation. President Biden is holding his first cabinet meeting since declaring his candidacy for re-election.
Could have been the week that catastrophic default happened, putting millions of people's jobs in jeopardy. But instead, we prevented the default, and our historic recovery continues.
Just before the meeting, Biden told reporters the group will discuss implementing the laws his administration has passed through Congress and continuing to invest in America. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A federal judge is allowing the names of those who posted bond for Congressman George Santos in his criminal fraud case to be unsealed. The Republicans' attorney on Monday asked a judge to keep the names of the bond co-signers who put up the $500,000 remain sealed, citing a media frenzy around the case. Media outlets and the House Ethics Committee want those names and requested they be unsealed. New York Republicans want to cut funding to any university promoting anti-Semitism on campuses. Natalie Migliori reports.
Congressman Mike Lawler introduced the bill, which is called the Stop Anti-Semitism on College Campuses Act. It comes just weeks after a graduating law school student from the City University of New York gave a controversial speech. Fatima Muhammad accused Israel of indiscriminately raining bullets and bombs on Palestinians, while also claiming laws are white supremacy and attack the NYPD and the U.S. military. The New York House Republican delegation has spoken out against the speech, along with Democrats, including New York City Mayor Adams and Congressman Richie Torres. I'm Natalie Migliori.
Apple unveils its new $3,500 Vision Pro virtual reality headset.
Introducing Apple Vision Pro. The era of spatial computing is here.
The company made the announcement this week at its developers conference event in California. Built with 5 sensors, 6 microphones, and 12 cameras, the pair of goggles will be available in the U.S. starting in early 2024. I'm Liz Warner.
A deer is creating havoc at a home in East Windsor, New Jersey. A deer ransacked Diane Twersky's home and then jumped straight into the backyard pool last Friday. The deer crashed through a window first before running through the house. Animal control said the deer did not seem badly injured, and they let it run back into the nearby woods. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance at a trip to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival. Text the nationwide keyword music to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's music to 200-200.
This September, our iHeartRadio Music Festival is coming back to Las Vegas.
September 22nd and 23rd at T-Mobile Arena.
Streaming live only on Hulu. Tickets go on sale Friday, June 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. But starting June 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern, Capital One cardholders can score tickets and other awesome experiences before anyone else for 48 hours only or while pre-sale tickets last.
Visit iHeartRadio.com/Capital One for more pre-sale details.
What's in your wallet?
This report is sponsored by Off.
Off Clean Feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. October is Energy Awareness Month,
and a good time to assess your home to make sure you're ready for the season's cooler temperatures. Keep your window shades open on sun-facing windows during the day to get free solar heat, and close them after dark to add a little extra insulation. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth. Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Education doesn't just take place in the classroom. There are many ways children of all ages can learn about sustainability and the environment at home. Visit iHeartRadio.com/Earth for a list of resources, activity guides, and toolkits that are educational and fun for the whole family. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Are you suffering from seasonal allergies? Because you're not alone. Experts say pollen season started earlier this year and will last longer, and that folks who've never had issues before are feeling miserable. I'm Martin Hoke, inventor of Navage, the world's only nose cleaner with powered suction. Over 3 million people use Navage to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, helping to flush out allergens, mucus, and germs. Navage helps clear your sinuses quickly and naturally. But what about other people's experiences, like Miss Clement? Quote, I chose Navage because of my persistent allergies. Navage works. While using it, I cut back on allergy meds and occasional shots at my doctor's office. Unquote. That's one of over 120,000 reviews with a 4.6-star average written by people who use Navage to breathe better, snore less, and feel healthier. Stop suffering and try Navage today at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
Rover's Morning Glory.
It's The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events. iHeartRadio Music Festival. All of the best free curated playlists.
It's everything that rocks.
All of the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over there, including Bernadette Bandicoot saying, good afternoon, looks like rain. Yep, checked outside the station right now, and those storm clouds certainly are a brewing. And from our news partners at KFOX 14, there has been a severe thunderstorm warning issued for Socorro, Horizon City, and San Elizario until 5:45. Also, if you want to add their photos to them, you can reply to them on social media or kfoxtv.com/chime in. That's kfoxtv.com/CHIMEIN. So be safe out there is what I'm going to say for all of that, because, the storm clouds were looking a little bit nasty out there. So just be careful, turn around, don't drown, all those important things to keep in mind, because unless you know damn sure how deep water actually is, you might not be totally able to tell. But a lot of other comments and a lot of other people tuning in, chiming in, dropping those likes and reacts that we do appreciate, including Rick Reyes, Amber Banda, Sean Gardner, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and Ida Beza Gardner. Do appreciate all of that. Some other interesting comments coming in, including John Browsland saying the tramway, the Weiler aerial tramway we were talking about, was originally started so Channel 9 could easily get their broadcast engineers up to their broadcast tower for operations and maintenance. And I mean, back at that time, it was all the one. So, I mean, sure, Channel 9 was a part of it, but not the original part. I mean, the radio essentially came first, but doing a little bit of research on it. 1959 was the date of construction for that one. Turned over to the public and opened in 2001, and then, of course, closed 2018 when the lifetime, the quote used in it, the tram has surpassed its life expectancy and is no longer suited for public use. So repair is a general phrase. The more, again, accurate one is replacements, which is why there were some, right before the pandemic, some public meetings going on about the reimagining use of it, among other things. So there's still a lot more to come there, I'm sure. But the cumulative $20 million, at least over the last couple of special sessions, should probably go a long way, hopefully, even if I'm sure inflation hasn't helped with that one. Anyway, of course, we're taking those phone calls right now. If that's how you choose to chime in, again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Number is open and available now. Just know you might be on there. And Sean Gardner asking and saying if there's lightning, disconnect your antennas. I think we got, if you're talking about ours, the broadcast ones up there. I'll get right up on that. Let me just be back in 3 hours. But no, seriously, we have like grounding and stuff like that for it. But for y'all individually, might be decent advice there. And Monica Cervantes also reporting that Las Cruces is getting gloomy and cloudy also. I mean, it's supposed to hit the whole borderland. And maybe this is just me, but it always seems like whatever weather El Paso is getting, Las Cruces gets it more. Either in heat waves, either in rain, either what have you. So good luck to y'all up there as well. And sometimes it misses us entirely and heads straight up to Cruces. So again, good luck and Godspeed. But let's get to those phone lines right now. Again, that phone number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Some important local news. Last Friday, Greg Abbott signed into law a bill that will cause so much suffering and pain in the state of Texas. It's going to literally cause children and Texans to kill themselves. Like, I wish that was hyperbole or a partisan exaggeration, but it really isn't. And that is the medical and mental health community communicating this. And I'm referring to Texas Republicans robbing parents of the freedom and right to provide their children with the health care recommended by their children's pediatricians and clinicians, health care that every major medical organization in the United States deems medically necessary for those who are gender non-congruent or transgender. Conservatives say they care about the mental health and mental health care of these children or trans people, But if they're going to blindly ignore and dismiss the views of the mental health community, this can't be honestly said. And the mental health community says that gender-affirming care is medically necessary. Unfortunately, conservatives and their information sources think children and trans people killing themselves is not important enough to honestly research or discuss. And when right-wing media isn't doing everything in their power to mock, dehumanize, and demonize these people, they're spreading outright falsehoods and lies about gender-affirming care and the medical community's views on it. And we really have to be rational and mature adults about this subject. We have the American Academy of Pediatrics, which represents 67,000 people who specialize in the health care of children. The American Medical Association, which represents 271,000 physicians, and the American Psychological Association, which represents 146,000 mental health professionals, all saying the same things about gender-affirming care for children based on the data and long-term research. Denying access to gender-affirming care to minors kills children. Giving access to gender-affirming care, however, saves the lives of children and adults. The medical community on this subject is not motivated by money, a desire to groom children, political correctness, or other ridiculous motivations. Conservatives have been deceived to blindly assume by their bad faith information sources. And they're motivated by the well-being of children because they're not cartoon villains. They're not experimenting on children because they're not cartoon villains. They're not ruining children for money because they're not cartoon villains. They're motivated by the long-term research available on the efficacy of gender-affirming care that says it saves lives, that it is medically necessary health care. Like, this shouldn't be a partisan issue at all. We should all legitimately care about the well-being of children and human beings in general. The thing is, in order to legitimately care about children, or anything for that matter, one has to have intellectual honesty, the ability to change one's views based on new information, the ability to do objective research, the ability to identify credible, good faith sources of information, and the ability to overcome political or religious biases. The actual well-being of children should be enough to inspire this degree of objectivity. And again, based on the medical community's views and the data, denying parents the right to give their children the gender-affirming care that their doctors recommend literally drives children to kill themselves. Increasing access to gender-affirming care literally saves their lives. This is not emotional blackmail. This is scientific and empirical fact based on the data. Like, that's why the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the Endocrine Society, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, all come out in support of gender-affirming care, and these laws being passed by conservatives in Republican states to deny it. And conservatives have demonized the social sciences, statistics, and experts for as long as I can remember in general, like in defense of dogmatism and tradition and wild right-wing conspiracies. And these bad habits have unfortunately filtered into this subject matter. Like an objective, like it is an objective and easily provable fact that conservatives' views on trans people, gender, and gender-affirming care for children are entirely the products of purposeful lies and bad faith sources of information, purposely misinforming them. Like, we can look at the sources like KFox, Epoch Times, Fox News, Matt Walsh, Elon Musk, and everyone on this station, what they're saying about trans people, and fact check what they're saying by researching the claims they make ourselves, and say that they're purposely lying and deceiving at the expense of the lives of children and misrepresenting the medical community's views.
Okay, you're getting into the whole browbeating everything else that we're not doing on this particular program here, but in general, I will fully and completely agree with you. That's harm mitigation, another way to put it here, but of making sure that people aren't suffering unnecessarily or killing themselves, as you're putting it here, is absolutely important here. I still personally have to say I have significant misgivings about such life-altering decisions made before the age of majority being made here. I mean, as some commenters are bringing up here, RJ promotes saying that children making decisions that sometimes change their minds about, but find they can't change back. 18 and 21 are significant ages for a good reason. I very much come down on the idea of mental health support being critical. I mean, I think that's a part that we've been failing children in general, and this specific subset of the population is absolutely a portion of it. But again, not going to use this program to browbeat other ones because we're not doing what they do, and trying to lump us all in with them is, just not going to be acceptable on this program in any way, shape, or form. But again, frankly, I don't care what other adults do with themselves and in their own private lives and their private homes. If they're literally not impacting anyone else, and I don't even mean that of a, well, I don't like what they're doing, therefore they need to stop. No, I don't want anyone worrying about what I do in my home and in my life any more than I do about anyone else. But I will say that considerations like this of the people I know in the trans community who have transitioned themselves to those kind of things, will add all above the age of majority in their own right, have made decisions and have been looking at leaving Texas, among other things, because of situations like this. Now, the fact that there aren't as much, I mean, some of the things put about this, and for more on this, Texas Tribune has it, Governor Greg Abbott signs legislation barring trans youth from accessing transition-related care, noting among other things that what this means from Senate Bill 14, that children already receiving the treatment will have to be, quote, weaned off, end quote, in a, quote, medically appropriate, end quote, manner. And it also bans transition-related surgeries for kids, though Texas Tribune does also note that those are rarely performed on minors because, frankly, doing radical things for those that have bodies still developing is not a good idea otherwise. I mean, there are a whole lot, a subset of, I mean, even within other non-related to this issue, but there are plenty of things that kids can do that can radically alter their bodies. Gymnastics is often brought up as an example of this, that, I mean, there's not just that gymnasts are small people, but that the way they are then for using their bodies and experiencing that over time can affect them theirs as well. So this is, of course, part of one of many things that has been passed here within Texas in this most recent time frame. There's certain implications that are kind of getting lumped together. That's some of the criticism that I'm most on board with about this, is that this is what's being focused on, as opposed to like the tax rates and the things that are some of the high priorities that have been put forth by the governor, including border security as well. So priorities is one of the major questions I have along with this, but there's no doubt in my mind that, particularly regardless of how you come down on what should or should not be available physically, or let's call it medication wise, to children, that mental health support and making sure that any subset of the population is not being more prone to killing themselves than otherwise is absolutely an important thing. So I'll fully agree with you on that point here, that making it so that kids aren't dying is certainly important.
You know, it's really important to have honest conversations about this subject because, again, children and trans adults are killing themselves over it. And, you know, you shouldn't be evoking, you know, people that you know about that are trans as you lobby against the mental health care, you know, and pretend to care about what the mental health care community has to say, when you're literally promoting views that go against what the mental health care community and the pediatric medical communities have to say about this subject.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to ask you this question again, as we often do. Are you actually listening to what I'm saying, or are you just looking for anything that you can try to jump on and do a hot take on? Because what I literally said was mental health care should be primary for this. I mean, frankly, we have a mental health issue and kind of crisis for these generations from this and other related issues. But for this specific subset of the population, this is a problem, certainly. Again, I have misgivings about doing anything for permanent body modification when it comes to those under 18 and whether or not that's a subset or not. I mean, some of the indications, including what I just quoted from the Texas Tribune, are of concern if they're showing that it's not that prevalent within those age groups, because doing those major kind of things, I mean, I have enough issues with anyone doing, say, nose jobs or other body part jobs before someone is, fully through their own development, even though that has been known to happen in the past, and this isn't really wrapped up in this either. But again, there's reasons reasonable people can disagree, but I think we are both agreeing, though I don't expect you to admit this, that mental health care is important. Do we agree that mental health care is important, or am I misreading you here?
It's important to respect the mental health care community's views, and you have the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, who specialize in the mental health care of children, and the American Psychiatric Association, who specializes in the medical views on mental health, all saying it's medically necessary. You can't compare this to nose jobs and all of these other frivolous medical procedures. They deem it medically necessary because the long-term medical research on this subject says that they kill themselves at greater rates if they don't get it. And I've explained in the past that this consent differs from various other types of consent because this consent of these minors is being done alongside parents, psychiatrists, and the child's doctors. These kids and their parents, they don't want to be, they don't choose to become one of the most openly hated and mocked demographics in the country, nor do they choose to be one of the most systemically oppressed demographics. These are incredibly tough decisions that they're forced to make because of the extreme mental anguish that drives them to go to the therapist. And, trans people, they don't want to be trans. It's not a fad or something. And parents generally don't want their kids to be trans, and they're not pressuring them to be trans, but, these parents love their kids enough that motivates them to research the subject, to look into what the pediatric doctors are saying and the mental health professionals. And there is enough long-term data to say that denying gender-affirming care to these minors after they've consented their therapists, pediatricians, and had long conversations about these subjects, that to deny that then this gender affirming care is going to exponentially increase their suffering to such a degree that it causes them to kill themselves. I really implore you, I'd like to look to take this subject matter like seriously. Try to look at the medical research, the data, because right-wing information sources, but like Matt Walsh and those on this station and KFOX, they are going out of their way to dehumanize trans people to the point where it discourages people from actually looking at the research that from the medical community. And when you look at what the medical community, the data, that the long-term data that's motivating these psychiatric doctors for young kids and the mental health pediatric doctors in general, they're all on the same page because the data is there. They're not motivated by money or dogmatism or political correctness. That's all nonsense. And it's important to look at how how consent differs in regards to children having the ability to give informed consent when they have the information from the doctors, the therapists, alongside doctors. This is not some fashionable decision that they're making because it's trendy.
I get that you're passionate about this, and I cannot even imagine putting myself being in the position of being a parent involved in this, as much as I have difficulty with the idea of imagining being a parent in general. I haven't crossed that bridge yet. But the point is that I can't imagine this is an easy decision. This is a simple decision. And as much as there are those that are very passionate about this on the other side, I mean, the Texas Tribune article among quote some of those that are proponents of it, of the idea of that social contagion, quote unquote, idea that has kind of cropped up around this, that it is being put forth like you're describing as fashionable or other things of it. But again, outside of any of these, how people feel about it, again, honestly, I don't care much about what people do with their own lives and their own bodies as much as I may never be able to conceive that for myself here. As long as they're good and happy with it, do you. I wouldn't want that same kind of scrutiny on my own life and on my own choices. But again, when we start talking about the age of it, I mean, whether or not certain medications, hormones, I am not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one. And the long-term impacts of that are something that I don't personally understand the most for. Again, we're referring to the adults that I know that have done these processes and gone through it. They are arduous. They are difficult. They are something that is happening over the course of years. And so I do have some misgivings about that happening at any kind of pre-majority age. And so if you're arguing for a specific form of consent on that, so I guess I get that idea of it. But do I agree with the Texas laws as they are being put forth? I'm not totally on board with it because, again, it is causing a lot of difficult decisions for a lot of families, which is not necessarily, I think, the way that the law should ever be applied. But, well, we'll see what, it has been signed into law. I know that some of the opponents of these laws are hoping to mount legal challenges against them, among other things. But again, as I try to focus on points of agreement more than anything else, I will fully agree with you that mental health care, mental support for this population, again, in general, the population, particularly the youth of Texas and of the country overall, need more of that. But this specific subset of the population certainly is one as well. So we got to take that next break. We're now well overdue for that next break. We got more callers on the line. We got more comments coming up, and we'll keep talking about this and the other issues going on and affecting us here in the borderland. So if you want to get on that line, add your 2 cents. Of course, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound from Wrestler up to Vinton, pretty slow this afternoon, 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain over to the 54 Patriot is a 7-minute delay. An earlier accident reported eastbound Pebble Hills and Zaragoza, and that water main break from a day or two ago at Mesa East and Donovan Drive. Most lanes have returned to being cleared and open, except the right turn lane there partially closed. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Off.
Off Clean Feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
Shopping for a gift for dad or grad? Get Rosetta Stone for 40% off now through June 18th. Learning a language will expand their horizons and open up new opportunities in career, travel, and more. Choose from Spanish, Italian, Japanese, and over 20 more languages. Rosetta Stone memberships are for life, so your present gets them forever access to language learning tools they can use for years to come. Get it now at rosettastone.com. 40% off ends June 18th.
No, not now. That sounds like it's going to cost you.
I know what to do. I'm going to cashnetusa.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, I could have the money in my account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
If you're hiring, it can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. Like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Now try ZipRecruiter free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/FREE.
My friend and I are taking a trip to Mexico this year, but neither of us speak Spanish. So we downloaded Babbel and started learning Spanish fast.
Want to start getting conversational in another language? In as little as 3 weeks, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons were designed by language experts to be the most efficient and effective way to learn a new language.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And again, as much as I don't like the idea of anyone killing themselves and think that mental health care support should be available to that subset of the population, whatever that it is, I mean, there are other things that give me misgivings about some of the positions given here. John Adams saying specifically, there's a reason kids can't purchase alcohol or cigarettes before the age of 21 and can't vote until 18. Part of the brain, the part of the brain that controls impulse and regulates reason isn't fully developed until the average age of 25. There's been an argument about moving some of those ages majority to that, but we as a society have decided that those at those ages of majority, particularly 18, is able to consent for themselves. Others, of course, making the point about the fact that, they're having to be, adults involved because they are having to, can't do the consent on their own, as was kind of being reasoned for there. But it's a difficult question, and one of the ones that I hesitate to say defines the current, age. And part of there's a lot of other bigger questions I would say, but of course it can be incredibly significant for those involved in it, and having to deal with the consequences of it. How do we make decisions? How do you navigate it? Again, I cannot even imagine doing that myself here. All I know is that for those celebrating what has happened in Texas, I do wonder where that leaves families that were already very trickily trying to navigate this, trying to say that, well, they're fine now. That's never quite been the impact of a law that I've seen anyway. And again, from those that I have known that have navigated this themselves, and not been easy questions or answers to ask or to find the answers for themselves here, and found more of them deciding to relocate based on also the attitude that comes along with it. Because the law is never just all right, here's what it is. There's always a power balance that comes along with it. right? The idea that something happening just means that that's where it stops. There's always okay, where is the balance of power? Where does it come on one side or the other of it? And it definitely seems to shift it one way or the other in this case here. So let's go ahead and take that next break real quick and just get back on track. But if you want to add your 2 cents, get onto the phone line on this or the many other issues we're talking about today. Of course, that phone number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back in a minute.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A woman who worked at a daycare in Las Cruces that was recorded using force on a child has been arrested. Angie Flores was booked into the Doña Ana County Detention Center on Monday. The 59-year-old woman is facing 2 counts of abuse of a child. Her arrest comes after KFOX 14 reported on that recorded incident that took place in February. The recording showed a 3-year-old boy who was being cared for at Discovery Child Development Center being picked up by his hoodie and dragged across the floor. A Venezuelan migrant was arrested and accused of murdering a fellow migrant from Honduras at an El Paso motel. 34-year-old Eddie Jose Ortega Alvarado was charged with murder in the case of the 40-year-old migrant's death. On May 21st, El Paso police were called to the Budget Lodge Motel on North Mesa regarding a woman. The victim was found dead inside a hotel room. According to police, Ortega Alvarado and another migrant who were staying at the hotel left El Paso to Dallas-Fort Worth, where he was arrested on Friday. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 westbound from Wrestler up to Vinton, pretty slow this afternoon, 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain over to the 54 Patriot is a 7-minute delay. An earlier accident reported eastbound Pebble Hills at Zaragoza, and that water main break from a day or two ago at Mesa East and Donovan Drive. Most lanes have returned to being cleared and open, except the right turn lane there partially closed. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Showers and thunderstorms will develop to our south and west and move through as we go through the evening and early nighttime hours. Some of those storms could contain hail or gusty winds. We'll see lows tonight dropping down into the 50s and 60s for our Wednesday. Partly cloudy, breezy, quieter for tomorrow, high around 90 degrees. For our Thursday, partly cloudy with high around 94. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Off.
Off Clean Feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
Is foot pain making your life miserable? The Good Feet Store wants to help. We invite you to visit our store at Airway Boulevard at I-10 for a free fitting and test walk and learn more about how the Good Feet Store can help you find relief. The Good Feet Store.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. October is Energy Awareness Month and a good time to assess your home to make sure you're ready for the season's cooler temperatures. Keep your window shades open on sun-facing windows during the day to get free solar heat and close them after dark to add a little extra insulation. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth. iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. When dining out or shopping at the grocery store, ask for sustainable seafood. By choosing sustainable seafood, you can help reduce overfishing, bycatch, loss of top predators, illegal fishing, and other harmful environmental impacts. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
What will you find at Macy's Backstage? Here's a hint. Summer essentials for $25 and under, like swimsuits, cover-ups, sunglasses, and more accessories you need now. Find the latest trends and new arrivals at a Macy's Backstage store near you. This report is sponsored by Macy's Backstage.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of implications, a lot of things we're talking about, and we're going to squeeze in as many calls as we can towards the end of this hour right now. So let's just dive straight in there. Number one last time, because we just filled up 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. That number to call here, cramming in what we can. So let's dive straight into it. We do have David on the east side here with us right now. David, thanks for joining us.
Hey, what's going on, Andrew?
Doing all right there. What's on your mind?
First-time caller. Been listening for about a couple of years now. I don't know how long you've been on.
About that, give or take.
I appreciate your point of view. I appreciate, and I've learned a lot since listening to your show. For example, I learned about the emissions and safety law about the vehicles here in Texas.
Yeah, sure.
Before anyone else knew about it, I know when to vote. I know, you bring up candidates and their point of view. I think it's pretty informative. And I think it fits the narrative of the show. After all, it's called Talk El Paso.
It is kind of our focus there. Mm-hmm.
With that being said, there are, I do appreciate all the personalities. It's like I've gotten to know people through the radio.
Sure.
But there are a couple of individuals that I feel that are undermining the show. And they're taking up a lot of time that could be used to talk about constructive things, like voting or laws, upcoming laws, et cetera, et cetera. And my question to you is, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
I have an inkling.
For these individuals to, because they're obviously not listening to your point of view. They're calling to undermine the show, in my humble opinion. So my question to you is, what is it going to take for, one of them's already been suspended from what I remember. And what is it going to take for them to be removed?
The level for removal has been, well, we haven't really reached it for on air here. We've had to do it for some of our online stuff. The barrier entry is lower there. People don't have to call in, etc. And if someone's just spamming or spamming profanity, either way, yeah, that's that we've already had to do that at least once. And we do it fairly frequently for just kind of the random spammers that show up there. But that's not truly to the heart of your question here. Listen, we have always been since the start of this, and we've been doing, actually, we just passed one of the anniversaries 3 years ago of one of the first daily kind of attempts of this show. We have been committed to taking on all the callers, anyone willing to put themselves out there ever since the inception of this program. Good, bad, in between, agreed with it or not, has never really been our focus here. I will say that it's kind of on me how long I sometimes entertain certain calls and certain points here. So if it's my foible, I'm not really willing to hold someone else liable on it, because if someone's actually willing to talk about things with me, discuss an issue passionately with the issues and their perspective on it, I'm always willing to entertain that. It's when someone starts saying, oh, hey, you've got some people that I think listen to this, let's beat up on them, that kind of a thing, I have no time for, because if you're not here to talk about those, again, two main missions, it's not for it. So the barrier for removal is we've got some very basic rules on our site. We've had to add in the idea that anything approaching libel, slander, or defamation won't be tolerated. I will say that, and we've had some corrective action that has had to be taken on that point here. But I guess the true answer is I don't really know, because we haven't approached it yet. But I will say this, anyone trying to, and I get that you're saying that you think that certain people are trying to undermine it, but I've never met a talking point that I couldn't at least understand, get back to, and respond further to. I've never been like damn, there's nothing I can say. Well, that's it for the show. We got to close up shop here. But I guess overall, anything that would threaten the ability of the show to continue on and providing, hopefully, and continuing to be able to do so, provide that service to this community, would be basically our red line. And I'm not sure that one is perfectly well defined, but for anyone curious about it, we do have some very basic information about what our policies are over on the Facebook page. And I'll just read that right now to answer your question. We reserve the right to remove or ban posts or commenters that include profanity, personal attacks, or inappropriate content. Threats or violence, hate speech, libel, slander, slurs, and spam, or posts trying to sell anything will not be tolerated. And so that definitely ends up cross-applying to over on air. But I'll just say this. I mean, intent is certainly important with it, but anyone trying to actually get this shut down, like someone, I mean, if someone swears on air, obviously we shut that down. So that's one of the easiest one, and someone who does that is automatically on timeout. But I guess maybe I'm willing to entertain more than I ought to, but having the frank and honest discussion, maybe the length of it is the real issue that I need to address better here, because as much as I'd love to truly like delve into things with people, we only got 2 hours, and sometimes entertaining it for too long, this isn't the right format for it. I'll agree with you entirely on that point.
I understand, and in my humble opinion, I think you deserve more respect than what they're giving you. And I think you let it go a little too far out of being neutral. I think you're fairly neutral. You provide good information. You've got a lot of patience. But I'm by no means am I insulting you by saying this. But there's an old saying that says, "Arguing with an idiot." I'm not calling you an idiot. I'm calling those other people idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And I give you more credit than that. And I would just hope that at some point you just say enough is enough. And that's all I have to say. And I thank you for your time.
No, I appreciate the point in the call and the perspective on it. I do take feedback at, and as much measure as is possible. I think another quote I think about sometimes here is that arguing with fools is pointless because they'll drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience. So I do have things like that in mind, and I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sure thing. With that, I think we can squeeze a couple more calls on the line here. And again, if you call in the middle of a segment, you might get popped up live. So just be Johnny on the spot with it. We do have Jerry in the Northwest on the line with us here right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Just in regards to your first caller, is anorexia and bulimia, are they mental conditions or emotional conditions that cause harm to people or to them, individuals, to themselves?
I would say that yes, in general. I've known several people who have recovered from those conditions, and they require significant mental health support in order to get over them. Yes.
Okie dokie. And is removing one's arm because they think it's causing them harm could be considered a mental condition?
I would be inclined to say yes, though I know that there is research into that. There's like a, not phantom limb system. That's when it's gone and you still feel it. But it's along those lines, similar types of phrases where someone doesn't recognize it. Or to even take it further, there's a certain conditions I'm aware of where people may think that they themselves are dead and want to like they think that they have passed but are still inhabiting a body. It gets a lot more complex than that, of course, and a lot of these things end up appearing in a various and sometimes badly characterized way on like your disease of the week, medical shows kind of things. And so, but in general, yes, that would require mental health support. I would fully agree with it.
Okay, do you remember the old TV show, and it was a movie also called MASH, where they had somebody in there called Klinger?
Yes.
Claimed to be a cross-dresser, basically. And the reason why he was doing that was so that he could get an Article 8 mental condition and be kicked out of the military.
And, of course, notably in that show, didn't work because he kept sticking around.
Right. And but those things were considered mental illness until somewhere around the 1995, 96. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because they did have people that were considered gay or lesbian or whatever that entered the medical field in psychiatry and psychology that promoted the gay agenda or the transsexual agenda. And according to the New York Times and Washington Post, anywhere between 40 and 50% of gay people or transgender people consider suicide. They're the highest group in the nation, not just children, talking about adults also. They are considered the highest rate of suicide cases in the nation. And not only our nation, also in the nation of Britain, England, some people might call it, and the nation of France. So this is not a phenomenon just related to Texas. This has to do with mental condition and spiritual condition, because part of it is spiritual. You ever hear of Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yes, I have. And okay, a couple of points I want to make here. When it comes to Klinger and MASH, I mean, I know it often comes up an example in this. Well, the way I always took that one was more about the absurdity of the military at that point in time, that they were so desperate for people and not willing to let anyone go that they wouldn't keep around someone who was actively trying to demonstrate that they weren't all there, but that also it was also kind of a commentary on the whole catch-22 type of thing. In order to call yourself mentally deficient, you have to be mentally proficient to then declare that. So therefore, are you deficient or not? Anyway, point is that, I mean, yeah, Old Testament and ideas of that are often thrown around with this. But again, the way I often come down on this is that I don't care how anyone lives their lives, as long as they're not actually harming themselves or others. And yes, the definition you brought up there and the idea of, anorexia, bulimia, and other conditions, mental health. That's why I keep coming down on the fact that mental health support for anyone of any condition, but particularly for marginalized communities, and particularly the suicide rates you're bringing up there, are often brought up as and that's why they're wrong, disease, or put other ways here, which I got to say I fundamentally disagree with, because it's kind of victim blaming in a way, because we are talking about communities that have since at least in the modern terms, there have been different treatments that have happened throughout history, if you want to go back far enough, as we're kind of doing with the biblical assertions. And again, I'm fine with references here, still not trying to become a theological debate society by any means of it here, but let me just say this, try to say that there are communities of people that have been marginalized, punished, their existence and the ability to exist denied in both text and sometimes in action. I mean, heck, how long was it even in Texas that the gay panic defense, so-called, where it was that for someone coming on to you and you're responding so much, as there is instances of people where people killed the other person in order to, and it was end up being an affirmative defense in court saying, yes, it happened, but they reacted in such a way here. The fact that that kind of thing can happen and is on the books here, imagine if anything along those lines had happened, and this often ends up being a part of the narrative as well, the idea that, oh, well, they want to do these things to other sexualities. And imagine growing with that idea and at any point in your life having to then encapsulate that is some of the treatment that is somewhat comes along with it. And I don't think that would do anything positive to my mental health, just so to speak. I mean, I sure take a lot of guff here, but it's nowhere near the idea of a constant questioning of the right or ability of me to exist. So I can't say I'm surprised that that type of mental health impacts can be seen, but calling it a basic aspect of the condition, the way it's being described here, is one that I do not end up agreeing with, because it is, again, it's putting the cart before the horse. It's saying that, oh, well, these people are bad, therefore they have these conditions. No, these people are marginalized, and therefore they have impacts that come along with it. Again, if you had someone screaming in your face that they hate you either online or in person at any point in your life, probably going to take a little bit of issue with that. But let's go ahead and we got to take that last break right now. So I appreciate the sincerity and the issues that come along with this. This is not an easy discussion, and one I'm sure we're not going to solve today or on any particular show, but well, we're here for it. I can definitely do this and make sure we can have the space to talk about issues like this. And I'm sure there's a lot of very sincerely held beliefs that we'll be happy to delve further into. We got to take that last break right now. Coming out of this break, till we got coming up for you on the show. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A woman who worked at a daycare in Los
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slow traffic on your Valley freeways right now. Eastbound on the 10 from Trans Mountain to the Patriot, 12-minute delays. I-10 westbound from Wrestler up to Vinton, it's a 5-minute delay. Montana Avenue eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza is a 10-minute backup. And on the spur, it's extra heavy eastbound from the Gateway to the Loop, 14-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Off.
Off Clean Feel, so I can accessorize with studs and not with mosquitoes. I can wear my classic white crop and flag panel jeans and know that I'm covered with 8 hours of not sticky, fragrance-free protection. Get your pre-party protection on with Off Clean Feel. SC Johnson.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Ricardo, quote, "This is one of the greatest inventions ever. I know this may sound like I'm exaggerating, but this sucker is amazing. The first time I did it, I couldn't believe what came out of my sinuses. I could breathe with ease. My wife just bought one too. Thank you for this product, unquote. He's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
If you're hiring, it can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can hope the right person comes along, or you can just use ZipRecruiter. Like Marco, president of operations at Telly Tires and Auto Centers.
ZipRecruiter helps me find all the right people, even the most difficult jobs to fill.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Now try ZipRecruiter free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/FREE.
My friend and I are taking a trip to Mexico this year, but neither of us speak Spanish. So we downloaded Babbel and started learning Spanish fast.
Want to start getting conversational in another language? In as little as 3 weeks, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons were designed by language experts to be the most efficient and effective way to learn a new language.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's BABBEL.com.
Did you know that only 2 in 10 El Paso County students graduate with a bachelor's degree? By supporting Border Youth Athletic Association's mission of educational attainment, you will create a long-lasting impact in our students' lives. Your monthly donation enables 4th through 12th grade students access to after-school programs, providing a safe and healthy environment. BYAA engages and empowers El Paso's future through mentorship and leadership development. We believe every player who gets an education wins. Do you? Go to borderyouth.org and show your support for our youth today.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Again, still have some of those severe thunderstorm warnings here, the ones that were already happening, having technically elapsed, but still seeing a lot of issues from the rain here, among other things. Do have reports of, that I'm hearing from people I know, about some stoplights not operational on near like a Wrestler and Westwind. So be safe if you're out on the roads there. Like Ed Core says, turn around, don't drown. We're in for those storms today, so be safe out there on the roads. But otherwise, that's going to do it for us for today. We did not get to all of the calls here because, again, we got foibles. It's maybe entertaining a point for too long, as long as someone's willing to actually discuss it here, among other things. But we'll, of course, be doing it again for you tomorrow, as we do every Monday through Friday at 4 to 6 p.m. So some of the things we're working on for you, again, more on the legislature. We didn't even talk about the new ultimatum mish that the lieutenant governor has issued, but we'll get into that tomorrow. We'll have to leave it there for today. Super out of time. I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again tomorrow, as again, every Monday through Friday. So until then, until next time, I want you all to stay safe out there. And I seriously mean that today. Stay safe out on the roads or in your home. Stay inside if you can, particularly in those areas of town being affected. But otherwise, I want you all, of course, look for twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slow traffic on your Valley freeways right now. Eastbound on the 10 from Trans Mountain to the Patriot, 12-minute delays. I-10 westbound from Wrestler up to Vinton, it's a 5-minute delay. Montana Avenue eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza is a 10-minute backup. And on the spur, it's extra heavy eastbound from the Gateway to the Loop, 14-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. That's right. Get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but for 95% less. It's the same medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, forhims.com/radio. That's forhims.com/radio for your free online visit. forhims.com/radio.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio.